Hi there, it's Vince Molinaro. Welcome to this episode of the Lead the Future podcast. I just had a great conversation with Vivian Lewis, who is the Vice President of Human Resources for an amazing organization called Smile Train. It orchestrates thousands of cleft palate operations globally through a partner network. And in this discussion, we shared how, as they've navigated their strategic shift, they really created a culture anchored on ownership and ensuring leaders and managers and employees have a one organization mindset. Vivian shares some amazing insights. And what I found also very interesting is how shared accountability, the ability of leaders to kind of call each other out, address things directly in a positive way, was critical to their success. So I hope you enjoy watching and listening to this podcast. I know you'll really take away a lot of amazing insights. Hi, Vivian. Welcome to the Lead the Future podcast. Thanks so much for being here. Why don't we just dive right in? Tell us a little bit about your role and the Smile Train organization.
Hi, Vince. Thanks for having me. I'm proud to serve as the Vice President of Human Resources at Smile Train. It's the world's largest cleft-focused charity organization. We partner with local medical professionals, operate in more than 75 countries, equipping them with the training and tools to support our local medical professionals so they can provide safe, high quality, comprehensive cleft care in their own communities. We have a teach a person to fish model that ensures that children and families have access to care that they need to when they need to at no cost to them, also creating lasting improvements within the healthcare infrastructure within their communities. So we really have a big global footprint and a strong commitment to sustainable impact. In my role, I'm responsible for shaping and executing our people strategy. At the enterprise level, I make sure that we have the talent, culture, and leadership necessary to deliver on our mission.
And given how critical the work of the organization is, and like thousands and thousands of young people that you help, given where the organization is now, what are some of the strategic challenges that you're facing?
Mhm. Um, Over the past 4 years, Smile Train has been having a serious strategic people transformation, especially in how we manage and empower our people. Um, as we move forward with a truly global unified organization, we've invested in people infrastructure in order to move forward our mission. To support that, we have included modern HR systems, enhanced benefits, automated performance reviews, strong internal communications. This connection has been central to the shift. Each year, we hold a 3-day global online meeting where staff across every region in the world join together during our business hours to discuss and orientate one another to what's happening around the world. It's a powerful tool for us to gain alignment and really reinforces a one organization mindset for us. We also invest in shared experiences through our Journey of Smiles program, where colleagues join each other across the world from places like Madagascar, the Philippines, Angola, Bangladesh, and Brazil. They travel to New York, often for the first time, while headquarters staff travel to the field. All of this are intentional focus on culture and connection. Our employee engagement surveys are consistently above 80%. And with that foundation in place, we've invested in our leadership.
So is the strategic shift that you really, you and the senior leaders have been leading is really trying to bring more of that one organization mindset among leaders and managers across, really across the planet?
Definitely, we've shifted dramatically over the last several years, navigating a meaningful way to shift, which I think is really important. Not just shifting for the sake of it, but really making sure it's intentional, meaningful. On the people side of the organization, in our 21 to 26 strategic plan, we set out to recruit and invest in people who are passionate about innovation, excellence, and results, and who reflect our commitment to diversity and inclusion. It sounds straightforward, but in practice, it's required us to grow, not just in headcount, but in how we operate. The biggest shift has been our willingness to plan boldly, learn quickly, and pivot when needed. Our leadership isn't afraid to change direction if something isn't serving the organization. That kind of mindset has allowed us to channel our resources into an infrastructure that matters. Right now, our enormous data infrastructure is being revamped. If you think about 2 million surgeries and the data that comes from that type of surgeries, it's enormous. And holding that and maintaining that, managing that data has become an enormous task. We have the largest data infrastructure on those cleft surgeries in the world.
Wow.
And as such, we have to evaluate this and use it also for grant making systems and also build our financial platforms around the things we do. Those investments are moving Smile Train forward as a world class cleft charity. Um, we're recognized by many sectors and many corporations like Amazon and Bloomberg have been gracious enough to recognize us as that transformation is still underway. We're building our next stage of strategic plan. So we've had to make shifts.
Yeah.
We're doing it strategically and intentionally.
Yeah, and it sounds like across all the parts of kind of your platform, it sounds as if you've also had to really become more sophisticated in your in terms of how you operate, across the people side, technology side, operational side. I think that's sounds like that's been critical, and as a result of those shifts, what has it meant in terms of what you needed from your leaders
Mhm.
in order to drive the success of this strategic shift?
Sure. Well, it's raised the bar in a very real way,
Yeah.
starting with our president and CEO, Susie Schaefer, our COO, Ashley Oates, and across the full leadership bench, there is a level of passion and clarity, of purpose that you don't see everywhere.
Yeah.
The mission is always top of mind, helping children who are cleft affected, um, but so is the strategic vision. And leaders are expected to make decisions that serve both. That's not easy. And to operate at that level on a consistent basis, we've had to have our leaders be highly adaptable. They've had to reorganize when change is needed. They've had to understand what ownership means and ownership of their business models and a one organization mindset. So it's not in a silo,
Yeah.
um, but it is one organization. And these type of expectations might sound simple, but great leadership is hard work, as you
Yeah.
know. I need to tell
Yeah.
you, it takes that intentionality
Yeah.
and discipline.
Yeah. So let's dig in a little deeper because the two words that jumped out was the ownership piece and the one organization mindset. So what have you seen as you've made these expectations clearer for leaders? Because like you said right at the start, right? This is a globally distributed company, organization that operates in many places around the world. And not everyone's headquartered in one building. So how do you really scale that sense of ownership and one organization mindset?
I think being clear in our expectations is
Yeah.
really important. Um, this past year, we moved, of course, through a leadership training cohort for all our top leaders. And now we're in our second leadership cohort. So we've gone down the second level. So we're making clear our expectations beyond training. We've gone into leadership pods, which we have a powerful mechanism for keeping leadership accountability alive. And our leadership contract, of course, with you, your organization, Vince, it's helped reinforce the behaviors that are expected and the culture that we want to see in the long term. I think a lot of organizations don't think in planning of culture. They kind of think it's going to come, but we have to be intentional about culture. We have to talk about the culture that we want and the behaviors that we want to see, not just short term, mid-term, and long term, because we know that there's a journey to get to what we want, right? So that's kind of like where we're headed and what we're doing.
Yeah, and in your experience, is that what organization miss when it comes to building leadership cultures? That sense of needing to be deliberate, defining it, reinforcing it, sustaining it. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, I've been doing this for longer than 20 years, longer than I want to say, right? But yes, I think that the culture needs to be intentional. Many leaders don't talk about the type of culture that they're looking at, or that they want to see, because they don't know how to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to break that down to what does it mean. So that shift, that miss of not having the attention to where they want to go, actually using those words about culture, intentionality, and what they want to see in the future and forecasting, I think is where we sometimes miss as organizations.
Yeah. And what have you seen? What has surprised you in a positive way in terms of how your leaders have embraced these ideas around ownership, accountability, one organization mindset. What have you been pleased with around the progress you made to date?
Mhm. I've been really happy to see how they hold each other accountable,
Mm, mm,
right? To be able to feel free to call each other out
yeah,
when things aren't going right.
yeah,
Just say, can I get 15 minutes with you? I want to talk to you about something.
yeah,
And calling them out in the right way.
yeah,
So we talk about what's best for Smile Train. And we use those words, like not what's best for your division, not what do we look at holistically, and a full enterprise level that we can make sure we are consistent and intentional about what we do. So I think the holding each other accountable has been a big surprise for me.
yeah. And it's interesting you hone in on that because what we find in our work is that the label we use is that shared accountability, right? That sometimes as leaders, you and I, we're on the hook for a common priority. I need your team, you need my team, we got to come together. And things don't always work out, so are we able to sit down and have a direct, honest, supportive conversation with each other? And the fact that the fact that that's happened is great because it doesn't happen in a lot of places. And what we've learned is that that's kind of the indicator when you actually see your leaders demonstrating that degree of shared accountability, and as you said, having that there's that willingness and courage to have those discussions with each other. That seems to be like you've hit another level culturally because things are possible now that aren't possible or weren't possible before when leaders felt apprehensive or didn't or did work around each other.
Mhm.
I don't know if that resonates with your experience.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It takes the confidence, um, that you have, that psychological safety to be able to make that leap.
Yeah,
And we're lucky to have a CEO that gives us that psychological safety to be
yeah,
able to be compelled to have that confidence and that courage to have that shared accountability.
yeah.
And I think that's kind of like the model, behavioral model that we want to emulate.
That's great. And so, what have you seen? So, you've seen the change in behavior, which is awesome. And what's your sense of how is that translated into better outcomes? For the organization, for the patients, the young people that you serve. What have you seen has been the benefit of that?
Well, I think that that shared accountability, that one organization mindset and strategic vision really came through in our recent mapping and strategic planning over the next 5 years that we're doing now,
Mhm.
where we were able to really cut through a lot of the silos and really talk and use in our planning that kind of that kind of language.
Yeah,
Like, who owns this, right? And as we're moving forward, we have to be clear in ownership.
yeah,
Talking about things like that, like, does the partner own this, right? So our partners who are doing the thousands of surgeries every day in the field, what do they own? And
yeah,
how do we make that support easier for them so that they can get what they need, so that we have infrastructure that's built, and serving the organization. When we do that, when we have our leaders talk in that way, we're able to have real deliverables that really affect the outcomes of our surgery, our quality and safety. We have a whole commission on that. We have a whole area for that, whole division. And those people understand what they're accountable for
Yeah.
and what do we want to see this year in terms of forecasting for our Q&A. So those kind of things, I think, are are the outcomes of having this type of model and this type of behavioral in terms of leadership.
I'm curious. I don't know if you have the data for it, but have you received any feedback from your partners in terms of, because that's the complexity of your model, right? You have an organization that's driving, obviously the execution of your strategy and plan, but most of that real work, at the surgery level, happens through partners. Have you had any feedback from them around the difference they've been feeling in working with your teams?
So we have some data on things like when we're looking at deliverables in terms of time waiting for surgeries, okay, and how we are looking at these different data points that we might not have looked at before,
Yeah,
right? That's the tie and the direct outcome of accountability,
yeah,
right? So we're looking at a lot of partners. Some partners are not fulfilling the roles in terms of numbers that we want to see. And so addressing that, how can we get them to where we need them to be? And I think that that is kind of pushing down that sort of mindset,
yeah,
that ownership and
yeah,
accountability mindset, so that we're reminding people, look, this is where we're at. So the whole organization, as it started with our leadership and pushing down to that program manager in the field, to that partner who has that relationship with that program manager, and they're
mhm,
saying, I'm accountable for making sure that this gets done and that we have a number of surgeries that, what's going on, and having that kind of conversation comes from the leadership type of model that we're looking at.
that's awesome. That's awesome, and you're able to track it, which is great. So ultimately, if we kind of personalize it for yourself a little bit as a seasoned senior executive, what has this experience taught you about what's critical when leading the kind of strategic shift that Smile Train has been leading in the last few years?
Well, it's number one taught me that to be grateful for a chief executive officer that allows this type of creativity. When I first walked in and say, I want to do this, and this is what I want to do,
Yeah,
and for her to say, okay, let's look at it. And then she met with you, Vince, and a few other people, and she said, you know what? This is what I want to do with our leaders. So it first starts there in
yeah,
terms of having that kind of being able to have the relationship to be able to walk in and say that. Not too many human resources executives have that
yeah,
access or have that creativity available to them. So that's the first step. And I've learned that, you know, a, one step can lead to a lot of change.
yeah,
And I think that's one of the things. The other thing is to be persistent and to keep things in front of mind for people. Like it's easy to start a program and then say, okay, and people will forget all about it. Yeah, I went through that program and they get back to work. It's
yeah,
keeping the language of accountability, keeping the one ownership and saying, hey, that's not where we want to be. That's not our culture.
yeah,
And bringing people back to what our intention is. And so those are kind of lessons that I've learned.
yeah. And so would that also be kind of the advice you would share with other, top HR, practitioners and professionals at the
Mhm.
executive level? Would that be what advice would you have for them? Because I've seen it repeatedly, and I see it with you. I mean, the relationship between the most senior executives and the head of human resources is so pivotal for this type of work. And when it's strong, to your point, that creativity um, unlocks so much. But when it's not that strong, it's hard to advance some of these really critical talent and people priorities. So, what advice would you have for other heads
Mhm.
of human resources out there?
Yeah, yeah. Great question. I think that we would always look at what the outcomes could be.
Yeah.
We are in a role that, everything is going well, every all's roses, right? If things start dropping down, Smile Train enjoys a over 80% consistent employee engagement
Wow.
um, model, right? So we are consistent in that, and we want to keep that. So we always want to look at outcomes. So I would say to everyone, always look at if we bring this factor here, this is what our outcomes can be, right?
Yeah.
And I think chief executives want to look at your outcomes. They
Yeah.
want to know what the ROI is. And bringing the ROI and explaining what that is and where we'll be as a relationship to the first creative touch point that we're bringing to them, I think really makes all the difference. And that's kind of where we're at right now. Our CEO and our board can see that we have delivered and that the way we're moving through our outcomes are there. We're working better, and we're making good decisions.
Yeah.
And all this helps to make our good decisions. So I think looking at the outcomes and being creative, and I think that makes all the difference.
Yeah, I love that, right? And it's both simple, but surprisingly in practice, how often it's missing. So speaking of outcomes, provide that picture of what will be the benefit.
Mm,
You're going to get that buy-in from the top, and obviously you'll get that buy-in
yeah.
from
Yeah, and making
everyone else.
sure you have the data to back it up. I I didn't just walk into my CEO's office. I gave her a whole presentation on a PowerPoint in order
Yeah,
to get where we got, right? So I think having the data to back you up
yeah,
helped. Having that 80%, 86% engagement percentage and wanting to keep it where it is really matters.
yeah. Well, thanks, Vivian, for your time. This has been a fascinating conversation. The work that, as we said at the start, a smile train is so critically important to so many people's lives. And not only is that work important, you continue to evolve the organization and build the organization that people around the world need in order for them to have better lives. So thank you for making time. I appreciate your insights and wish you and your team continued success as you move forward.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure, Vince.